Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Let's get into it, and I do want to start with what I believe to be the topic of the day in college sports, and that is the University of Arizona self-imposed NCAA tournament ban this year. And for people who don't remember all the particulars, this still stems from that NCAA FBI investigation that started in 2017. It involved an assistant coach, Book Richardson, giving a small amount of cash to a recruit who is Javon Quinterly, who is actually still playing college basketball at the University of Alabama. But Arizona looked at the landscape and said, you know what, at some point these NCAA sanctions are going to come down, and we're going to get ahead of it, and we're going to ban ourselves from the 2021 NCAA Tournament. For people who are wondering, who maybe haven't been following Pac-12 basketball, and I can't blame you if you're not at this time of year, but Arizona's actually pretty good. They're 7-1, and they were coming off a really nice win over Colorado on Monday night. And from what I understand, this was blindsiding. This was not Sean Miller's decision. This was not his staff's decision. This was not even the AD's decision, but it instead came from above, from the school president. And so Arizona will not be participating in the 2021 NCAA tournament. First reaction, this is ridiculous. For these NCAA bowl bans and self-imposed sanctions for football and basketball, they have to stop. I think it is the most absurd thing. I think it's the most stupid thing. And the analogy that I've used a bunch here, because it's happened quite a bit over the last couple months, LSU self-imposed a bowl ban, Auburn basketball self-imposed an NCAA tournament ban. What I say is it's like going to your parents when you get in trouble as a kid. You get caught smoking cigarettes behind the bleachers, and you go to your parents and you say, you know what, listen, I know I shouldn't have been smoking cigarettes. I feel bad. I feel terrible. I'll tell you what, I'm going to ban myself from playing video games for the next day. And then we're good, right? And then there's no problem because I just gave myself my own punishment. No, that's not how it works in the real world. When you crash your car, you don't go in front of the judge and say, yeah, Mr. Judge, I'm not going to drive here for the next 2 weeks, but after that I'll be good, right? That's not how it works, and it's not how it should work with the NCAA judicial system. And so, one, I just think it's absurd that we're still even allowing teams to self-impose NCAA tournament bans or bowl bans. And if I was the NCAA, this is the one rule that I would strict from the record books right now, or strict from the rule book right now. You guys know me. I'm not Mr. NCAA is evil. Everything they do is wrong. They're terrible, awful, blah, blah, blah. But I do think this is one thing where they have to step in and say no. Say, look, if you want to sit out of the NCAA tournament, if you want to not play in a bowl game, that's fine. But that is going to have no dictation on the punishment that we give you. In a lot of ways, I don't even blame Arizona. I don't even blame Auburn basketball. I don't even blame LSU football. The NCAA allows you to do this. I don't know if it actually helps with actual punishments or not, but I don't blame Arizona for deciding to do this because it is allowed under the rule book, and maybe it will help them in the bigger picture of this entire investigation. Second reaction is, look, I do feel bad for the players. And I know a lot of you would say a couple things. You'd say, Aaron, you just said it. This all started in 2017 with Book Richardson. Anyone who has committed to Arizona over the last 3 recruiting cycles in 2018, 2019, or 2020, they knew what was coming when they signed up to play at Arizona. They knew this was going to come eventually. I think a lot of other people would say, hey, the NCAA has announced that they are giving everyone a free quote-unquote year of eligibility, so anybody who was on the roster this year who wants to be part of an NCAA tournament team, they can come back next year and compete for an NCAA tournament bid. I get it. I understand it. I still don't agree with it, and I do still feel bad for the players. I think when I look at it from the players' perspective, first of all, I do not think that any postseason ban should be allowed to happen once the semester starts at these schools. So in other words, if the fall semester starts on September 1st or August 29th or whatever, I don't believe that the NCAA should be allowed to come in and say, you can't play in the postseason this year. And I don't think that the school, obviously, as I just rambled about, should be allowed to come in and say, hey, we're not going to allow you guys to play in the NCAA tournament this year. I just think it's totally unfair. If you think that if the NCAA is going to punish you, or if the school wants to punish itself, do it before the season starts. Do it before the semester starts, so that if a player wants to transfer and have the opportunity to play in a bowl game or NCAA tournament, that they can do it and they can go to a place where it's allowed. On top of that, this whole, well, they get another extra year thing. Come on now. We got fifth-year seniors in Arizona that are graduate transfers, 22, 23 years old. We got guys that have opportunities overseas, that are going to have opportunities in the NBA. And I just think, like, at a certain point, guys do not want to stay in college for a fifth or sixth year. Many of them have already graduated. And I understand, like, yeah, that's something that you have to sacrifice, but why do you have to sacrifice it? If the school wanted to self-impose this punishment, they should have done it in the summer, not in the middle of the season. And again, allowed that grad transfer that came to Arizona to play in the NCAA tournament to pursue another opportunity. Allow those other players to pursue professional options if they want. I just don't like it. I think it's unfair, and I don't even think it's just unfair at Arizona. I think it's unfair with LSU football, although I don't think those guys even want to play in a bowl game. I think it's unfair to Auburn basketball. I'll take it a step further. I don't like that it's still happening to Louisville and Kansas either, or Memphis or NC State, or all these programs that are under NCAA investigation. And so I would wrap on this topic by saying exactly that. I think it's nonsense that we're still doing these investigations in 2021. And it's funny because, and I got it on Tuesday when this news broke, but every single time I tweet anything or I talk at all about Arizona basketball, you already know the first thing that comes up in my mentions, in my Twitter, in my whatever. Oh, how does Sean Miller have a job? How does he have a job? Why is he still employed? And like I will say, and anyone who listens to this show, you know where I stand on all this, but I will say again, one, I understand your point of view, but I also hope that you understand my point of view, which is that, as I've said many times, I'm not here to defend Sean Miller. I'm not here to fight for him. I'll be honest, I've never talked to the guy once in my life. I don't know, outside of a media availability, if I've ever even been in the same room as the guy. But as of right now, we have no proof that he did anything wrong. And to take it a step further, I want to say this. I think we're getting to the point where we have to start asking ourselves, like, are we sure that the NCAA actually has anything on Sean Miller? And again, it goes back to what I've said a million times. Don't know the guy, know nothing about him personally, don't know if he cheated, don't know if he'll be caught, don't know if he'll be punished. But what I would also say is this whole thing started in 2017. This happened in 2017, long time ago. It was so long ago, here's some context for how long ago it was. DeAndre Ayton had just started his freshman year at Arizona. Joe Burrow, the Heisman Trophy winner at LSU, was still at Ohio State. It was a long time ago. And so I'm sitting here just saying, look, if Sean Miller broke the rules, I want the guy to be punished as much as anybody else. But if he broke the rules, wouldn't we know about it by now? This started in September of 2017. It's January 2021 by the time many of you will listen to this. How do we have nothing on this guy? Now, I get it. I'm putting my neck out on the line. We could get something in a week. I could be made to look like an idiot in a week. And as I've said all along, if the guy gets caught doing something, I will say to fire his behind. But I do think it's ridiculous. I do think it's just silly that we're still, arguing about this guy all these years later. And I would take it a step further. It goes back to what I said a minute ago. With all of these schools, not just Arizona, but Louisville, Kansas, NC State, LSU, Memphis, whatever. At a certain point, this is on the NCAA to get these investigations done. Because if you have something on Sean Miller, then bring it to the forefront. Bring it to the table so that Arizona can move on as a school. They can make their decision. Are we staying with Sean Miller? Are we firing him? What's the future of our program? What do we do? But this whole keep a program in limbo thing, it's getting ridiculous here. It's like the old saying goes, crap or get off the pot, NCAA. And listen, I'm not anti-NCAA guy, But I do think those of you who ask me, why have we not gotten any final answers on any of these investigations, I get where you're coming from. You know who wants to move on more than anybody in this Arizona basketball situation? Arizona basketball. The school wants to know, can we fire Sean Miller for cause and go out and start over and hire a new coach? Can we keep Sean Miller? Is Sean Miller innocent? Are we going to get hit with more NCAA rules violations? Because if we are, we want to prepare for it. We want to get going. We want to start the process. And it's not just Arizona. It's Louisville. It's Kansas. It's Memphis. It's NC State. And in some ways, I do feel bad for these programs. Now, look, I want everybody to be punished that needs to be punished. If you broke the rules and you shouldn't be participating as a coach or whatever in college basketball or college football, that's fine. I can live with it. You know what you signed up for. And if it's time for Sean Miller to take a hike, it's time for Sean Miller to take a hike. Hopefully, we'll find out in the coming months if that's the case. But again, I would say for the millionth time, if they had something on Sean Miller, I feel like it would have come out right now. Beyond that, let's not forget, this wasn't an NCAA investigation. This started with the FBI. So if the FBI gave any information at all to the NCAA, I feel like if Sean Miller did something, the FBI would have caught him. And if the FBI caught him, he'd probably, frankly, be in jail. But the NCAA would have gotten a hold of it by now and whatever. And I would say it applies to all these other schools too. I don't really know Chris Mack outside of the one time I had him on this podcast, but man, like, that guy's just ready to move on from what Rick Pitino did 4 years ago. Bill Self, I've been critical as hell of the guy. He just wants to know what his punishment is so he can start rebuilding his program and doing what he needs to do. But he's like, dude, I've been in this limbo for 4 years where it's like, what do we do? Do we move forward? Am I staying? Am I going? What am I doing? Kevin Keats at NC State, that guy's just like trying to build his program. He can't control what happened 5 years ago with Mark Gottfried, but whatever it is, he wants to know so he can move on. And so my biggest takeaway doesn't even really apply to Arizona. It applies to this entire process of like NCAA. I feel like I'm the Judge Judy gif here, the Judge Judy meme, like pointing to my watch, like, let's get going here. If Sean Miller's guilty, show us the proof. Let's kick his butt out. Let's let Arizona start over. Let's let Sean Miller start over, by the way. I don't know where he would go, maybe to the NBA or overseas or something. He probably wouldn't coach in college basketball again. But, like, let's get this show on the road here. Arizona's ready to move on. Sean Miller's ready to move on. Louisville's ready to move on. Chris Mack's ready to move on and on and on and on and on. It's frustrating, but I do think that the latest chapter, Arizona, self-imposed NCAA tournament ban, it's just ridiculous. I hate it. I would hate it if Sean Miller did it or if Arizona did it. I would hate it I hate it when Louisville did it 6-7 years ago. I hated it when SMU did it 6-7 years ago. I hated it when Auburn did it this fall. I hated it when LSU did it this fall. It's a ridiculous, preposterous concept, but I also do think it speaks to the fact, like, NCAA, let's get this thing going. If Sean Miller's guilty, boot his butt out, and let's move on to the next guy. Let's move on to the next thing. Let him move on with his life. It's the same with Bill Self at Kansas. It's the same with Will Wade at LSU, and it's the same with all of these situations, but we're now at the point where we're 4 years removed from these rules violations, and, like, we got to get moving here. We just got to get moving.